The courtroom hummed with tension, a mix of whispered conversations and the rustle of legal papers. At the center of it all stood 9-year-old David Thompson, a slight boy with wire-rimmed glasses and a school notebook clutched tightly in his hands. His mother, Janet, sat beside him, her nursing assistant uniform slightly wrinkled from a long shift. Across the room, Robert Wellington III, a Chicago real estate tycoon, lounged in his chair, flanked by two high priest lawyers in tailored suits. The contrast was stark. A working-class mother and her precocious son against a man whose wealth could buy silence. Judge Harrison, a seasoned jurist with a stern demeanor softened by curiosity, peered over his glasses as David's voice rang out, "I am my mother's lawyer." The words landed like a thunderclap. Heads turned. Robert Wellington nearly choked on his coffee, his polished facade cracking. The judge paused, his pen hovering over a stack of documents. "I'm sorry, young man," Judge Harrison said, his tone a mix of patience and skepticism, "but this is a legal hearing between adults." David adjusted his glasses, undeterred. "I know, Your Honor, but according to Article 12 of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, ratified by the United States, I have the right to express my opinion on matters that directly affect me." He opened his notebook, its pages filled with neat, handwritten notes. "And this case definitely affects me." The silence that followed was electric. Robert's lawyers exchanged uneasy glances. Janet's eyes shimmered with pride and fear. In that moment, a 9-year-old boy had seized control of a $1 million custody battle. David Thompson wasn't always a courtroom warrior. 8 months earlier, he was just a bright kid in a cramped apartment, helping his mother, Janet, balance her nursing assistant shifts with his homework. Janet, a single mother, worked 60 hours a week to keep them afloat. Her hands, calloused from years of lifting patients, still found time to braid David's hair or read him bedtime stories about heroes who defied the odds. David's biological father, Robert Wellington, had been a ghost in their lives. He'd appeared only 4 times in David's 9 years, each visit brief, marked by expensive gifts and hollow promises. A remote-controlled car for a birthday 3 weeks late, a rushed Christmas visit squeezed between gala dinners, a photo op for a local newspaper touting his philanthropy. Each encounter left David with a sinking feeling. His father saw him as an inconvenience, not a son, but everything changed when a legal notice arrived. Robert, now facing financial ruin after a string of failed business deals, was seeking full custody of David. Janet was blindsided. She couldn't afford a lawyer, and Robert's wealth seemed insurmountable. Seen David's discovery visual, Chicago Central Public Library, shelves towering over a small boy. David, sensing his mother's distress, took matters into his own hands. After school, he began visiting the Chicago Central Public Library, a grand building with marble floors and endless rows of books. There he met Ms. Rodriguez, a librarian with a master's degree in information science and a passion for helping underdogs. Family court. Ms. Rodriguez said, peering at David over her reading glasses. "That's a big topic for a kid." "It's not for school," David admitted, his voice steady but his eyes betraying worry. "It's for my mum. They're trying to take me away." Ms. Rodriguez didn't patronize him. Instead, she taught him how to navigate legal databases, search public records, and understand children's rights. David spent every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon at the library, his school backpack stuffed with notes. He read legal codes like other kids read comics, absorbing terms like custodial rights and best interests of the child. Subplot: Janet's struggle visual, hospital break room, Janet sipping coffee, exhausted while David researched. Janet faced her own battles. Her co-workers at the hospital noticed her growing anxiety. "You can't fight a millionaire, Janet," one colleague warned. But Janet refused to give up. She took extra shifts to save for legal fees, even as she doubted they'd be enough. Her supervisor, Nurse Clara, became an unexpected ally, offering emotional support and connecting Janet with a local legal aid group. Though the group couldn't take her case, they provided basic advice that David later wove into his strategy. David's research revealed a web of secrets about Robert Wellington. Using public records, he discovered Robert had lost a $2.3 million lawsuit against former business partners. A divorce filing from Robert's third wife hinted at hidden assets and financial misconduct. Most shockingly, David uncovered a trust fund established by his late paternal grandmother, Eleanor Wellington, worth $1.7 million. The fund was for David's education and care, accessible only when he turned 18 or if Robert gained full custody. The pieces clicked. Robert's sudden interest in custody wasn't paternal love. It was a desperate grab for the trust fund to offset his financial losses. David's anger fueled his determination. He began documenting Robert's business practices, finding lawsuits where Wellington Industries had preyed on struggling families, buying their properties at a fraction of their value. One case involved the Santos family, Mexican immigrants who lost their bakery after Robert exploited their financial distress. New character, Maria Santos. Visual, a community center. David meeting a shy teenager. David's research led him to Maria Santos, the 16-year-old daughter of the bakery owners. At a community center, Maria shared her family's story, her voice trembling with anger. "Your dad knew we couldn't pay the loan. He swooped in like a vulture." David promised to include her family's case in his presentation, forging a bond that would later inspire his advocacy work. Scene: the recorder. Visual, David's bedroom, a small digital recorder hidden in a drawer. David's trump card came by chance. During Robert's last visit, David had left a digital recorder running in the living room, a trick he'd learned from Ms. Rodriguez about documenting evidence. Robert, assuming David was out of earshot, spoke candidly on the phone about sending David to Riverside Military Academy, a boarding school with a dark reputation, to access the trust fund while keeping David out of the picture. The recording was devastating. "The kid's too smart for his own good. Riverside will handle him. I'll get the money, and no one will know." David listened to the recording alone in his room, tears stinging his eyes. But instead of breaking, he sharpened. His resolve that the custody hearing was a spectacle. Robert's lawyers, led by Dr. Mitchell, painted Janet as an unfit mother, citing her long hours and modest income. David listened quietly, his notebook open, waiting for his moment. When Judge Harrison invited public comments, David stood. "Your Honor, I've prepared a documented presentation on why I should remain with my mother, including evidence of the petitioner's true motives." He held up his manila folder filled with copies of lawsuits, financial records, and photos of the Santos family's bakery. Robert's face paled as David methodically laid out his case: the trust fund, Robert's financial troubles, and his predatory business practices. The courtroom gasped when David played the recording, Robert's voice echoing with callous intent. Janet wept silently, overwhelmed by her son's courage. Dr. Mitchell scrambled to object, but David countered with precision. "Public records are accessible to any citizen, regardless of age. Ms. Rodriguez taught me that the truth is out there if you know where to look." Climactic moment. Visual, David reading his grandmother's letter. David's final blow was a letter from Eleanor Wellington, found in estate records. "My grandmother knew Robert was never a good father," David said, his voice steady. "She set up the trust to protect me from him. She hired investigators to document his schemes. It's all on file." The courtroom was silent. Judge Harrison, visibly moved, denied Robert's custody request and ordered an investigation into his financial dealings. Robert was escorted out, his empire crumbling under the weight of a 9-year-old's truth. 3 years later, David's story had transformed him into a national icon. The courtroom recording went viral, amassing 50 million views and sparking legislative changes in 17 states to amplify children's voices in custody cases. David, now 12, appeared on a morning show, his calm demeanor unchanged. "I'd rather just be called David," he told the host, who learned that every child has a voice, even when adults pretend not to listen. Janet, now a nursing supervisor, watched proudly from backstage. Her hospital had created the Janet Thompson Scholarship for children of low-income employees, inspired by their story. David's book, Every Child Has a Voice, funded legal aid for families in need. His Cool Law Library project brought children's rights resources to 1,200 libraries nationwide. Subplot resolution. Maria Santos. Visual, a rebuilt bakery. Maria smiling behind the counter. Maria Santos' family regained their bakery through a community fundraiser sparked by David's advocacy. Maria wrote to David, thanking him for inspiring her to speak out. Her letter joined hundreds in a box David kept, a testament to his impact. Robert's downfall. Visual, a small apartment. Robert, watching TV alone. Robert Wellington, stripped of his wealth and reputation, worked as a salesman in a Chicago suburb. The investigation triggered by David's evidence exposed his fraud, costing him his company and freedom. In rare moments of reflection, he marveled at the son he'd underestimated, though pride was overshadowed by regret. At 16, David became the youngest lawyer admitted to the bar, thanks to a Harvard scholarship for social justice. His first case challenged the education system for neglecting children's rights, setting a precedent for mandatory legal education in schools. Janet, now a hospital administrator, watched her son graduate, her pride tempered by the memory of their struggle. "You were always my hero," she told him, tears in her eyes. David's legacy grew. His cool law library project expanded globally, and his speeches inspired millions of children to know their rights. Letters from kids like Sophia Martinez, who saved her grandmother from eviction, filled his office. "Never let anyone tell you you're too small to make a difference," David told a packed auditorium. "I was 9 when I changed my life, and my mother's. You can change yours, too." The camera panned to Janet, clapping through tears, and Ms. Rodriguez, now a national advocate for library access. David's story wasn't just a victory over one man's greed, it was a movement, proving that intelligence, courage, and love could reshape the world.